Drew and I met in January of 2010. I was at a friend's birthday party and he was there. He had some friends in town visiting, and we were both at Stella Maris, the classy establishment.
We met, to cut to the chase, I was at a local watering hole with some friends, and she was as well.
And it was like the second weekend it opened. We actually both were in the smoking section at one of the bars, and it was the smoking section, so it was funny because neither one of us smoke. And he claims that I skipped him in line, but I didn't see him.
So I, in my slick ways, picked up a bunch of straws and threw it at her head and got her attention.
Until I felt a straw kind of hit me in the hand, and he was getting my attention. So he ended up coming over and asking me if I minded ordering drinks for him and his friends, because he had been standing there for a while. And he said, if you did it, I'll get you and your friend a drink. But at the time he didn't realize that I had 5 friends that I was buying drinks for. So he said, my name's Drew Holland, go ahead and put it on my tab.
What it boils down to is I wouldn't get served, or wasn't as attractive as Cyndi, and she somewhat cut me in line, or however you want to look at it. And I'd been sitting there 5 or 6 minutes, and the guy jumps right to her, knowing full well that I'd been standing there.
So I ordered our drinks for everybody and turned around and gave it to him, and this is the time that I first saw him. And when I saw him, I got a good look at him, got a good look at his dimples, and looked down and saw his cowboy boots, and I was like, what a cute little boy. And so then at that point, after all of our drinks had been given to us, some of our friends had given us a little bit of cash.
So then she took money, shoved it down my shirt, which I now have in a framed poster on my wall to keep it classy. So,
hoping that this was going to intrigue him and he'd want to come back and say hi or something. And so then I saw him a little bit later that night, and he was still standing there holding the same drinks, couldn't find his friends.
Needless to say, that for whatever reason worked.
He came up and talked to me, and I found out he was from Kentucky, and I just graduated from a school in Kentucky, and found out that he was an engineer, and I just started school as engineering school. So it was all very exciting, and from that day forward, we never turned back.
I guess our first date would be at the same place the following weekend. We went back. She was with some of her friends, I was with some of my friends, but we knew we were going to be there. We both went out of our way to meet up. So I remember walking around and finally seeing her and being happy that she was as I remembered. She came up and hugged, and we danced and all that good stuff, and that was our first planned meeting, I guess you'd say.
Our first date was actually for Valentine's Day. We went to, well, the way he asked me to go on the date, we had met a few times after we had first met, but this was the first official date, and the last time we had met, said, I got this gift card to a couple different restaurants. You might want to join me on Valentine's Day. And I said, well, yeah, I guess if you have a gift card, then that makes it even more of a reason to go with you. So we went to Bahama Breeze. Of course, it was Valentine's Day, so it was packed. So we sat at the bar, but we ended up getting there, you know, 7 o'clock, and ended up staying, gosh, probably like till the place closed. So it was really like a first like kind of intimate setting that we had. So it was a very memorable time, and whenever I went there, we were very new in our relationship. So it was kind of, do I get him a present for Valentine's Day? Do I not? And so I didn't, because I wasn't sure and I didn't want to seem too clingy. So but when I walked in, he had pink roses, which, you know, is a sign of, kind of like a middle ground rose. So they were very beautiful roses, and I actually still have them. So Drew proposed on May 4th last year, and we were leaving the next day to go on a vacation to Destin, Florida. And I knew, because Drew and I at this point in time had been together for 2.5 years, and I knew he would not propose to me on this trip because he had a friend that proposed on a trip, and it didn't turn out too well after a similar trip. So I knew it wouldn't happen then, and I was kind of, we've got a lot going on that summer, and I was like, well, it's never coming, so not coming anytime soon. So on May 4th, it was a Friday, he's come home early on that Thursday, and he kind of surprised me when he came home, and so I didn't know what he was doing. He would do that sometimes when he would come home. He would come home early. So he came home early, and I wasn't really sure what he was doing or anything like that, but I had to go to work the next day. So the next day after work, I run into the house and I start changing clothes really fast, and he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I have to go teach jazzercise, so I have to go teach my aerobics class. And he was like, you have to teach class tonight? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, oh, well, I thought maybe we could like go get something to eat or something like that, you know, tonight. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And he was like, so whenever you get home, do you want to change? Because he didn't want me to be nice and sweaty for him proposing to me. So so I was like, yeah, that's fine. So he's like, oh, wait a minute, we have to go get my car. His Corvette had been in the shop, so we had to go drive all the way out to Covington to get the Corvette. And then at the same time, he was like, why don't you go ahead and ride with me to drop me off, and when you get done, you can take Maggie to your mom's so that they can have the dog, and we won't have to worry about her tomorrow. So I said, okay. So when I teach jazzercise, and then I come back home, and thinking after all of the dog dropping off, I'm going to take a shower, and then we'll go to dinner. Buffalo Wild Wings is like our favorite place to go on Friday night, so that's where we were planning on going. It's very romantic. So we go to Covington, and I drop him off, and it takes forever to get to Covington, and then I drive out to my parents' house, and I don't really pick up on anything that day, and I noticed that I do remember noticing that my stepdad had some champagne flutes out, but having a blonde moment, I just thought they were cleaning the champagne flutes. I wasn't really sure what was going on. And so while I was sitting there talking to my mom, she couldn't say, you know, Cyndi, go home, and I ended up sitting there and talking to her for 2 hours. And so at this point, it's 9:30 at night now, and my phone is in my car because I thought I was just running in and running out. So then I run out to go get my car, and Drew has called me 6 times. And I'm like, oh gosh. And so I call him, and he's like, Cyndi, I don't have a garage door opener. I can't get into the house. I was like, oh yeah. So I rushed back home to go let him into the house, and at this point he's like, I've decided to just get something to eat. I'll cook it at home. So we go back to, I go back to the house, and he is parking the car in the garage, and I noticed that he has a little trouble parking the car in the garage, which is kind of funny because he doesn't ever have problems with it. And so then we go into the house, and I didn't notice this at the time, but he said that he was trying to turn a light on, and he kept hitting a picture instead. He was nowhere near the light. So he kept running back and forth outside, and I hadn't been home enough all day to see what he was doing, and I thought he was just putting stuff up before we went on our vacation. So we go outside, or he goes outside, and he's kind of fiddling around, and he's like, hey Cyndi, can you come here really fast? I bought you something today. And I was like, okay. And so I walk outside, and he has these owl solar lights. I love owls, and so he had the owl solar lights, and I was kind of like, oh, those are really cool. And he's just kind of showing me the different lights.
We have a deck on my house that has a couple awnings, and it's a nice deck. And I decorated it I added some lighting. Went and got her 2 owls. It was a glow-in-the-dark kind of owl thing. She's crazy about owls. So I decorated the backyard, got a bottle of champagne in a fancy Walmart bucket, stuck it back there, and I walked her out when she finally got home. She was about three hours later than I expected her, because she had different plans than I envisioned, and called some audibles and did some different stuff. Meanwhile, I'm sitting at home in shambles trying to figure out how I'm actually going to get through this. So she got home. I took her out there and just knocked it out and asked her, and here we are.
And so on one side it was like these little tiki torch kind of lights, and then on the other side it was those white globe lights. Like there was a bunch of those white paper lanterns. And so he brought me underneath the white paper lanterns, and we were looking up at them, and then he started getting really mushy on me, and I was like, so and so then at that point he said some very sweet things to me and kind of reassured me as to why our relationship is the way it is. And then he got down on one knee and proposed to me, and he was anxious to put I of course said yes, but he was anxious to put the ring on my finger, but I just jumped on him for I think 15 minutes, and all the while he had a bottle of champagne sitting out in a little ice bucket, and I never noticed the ice bucket, but he was trying to maneuver himself the whole entire time to cover the ice bucket. So we sat out there and just kind of soaked in the moment for a little while, and then started calling all of our friends and family, and then we went on a vacation the next day. So it was a great weekend, but that's the whole story.